Welcome to another episode of Momentos and Voices. Today, I am honored to have here in the studio Claudia Villarreal. She is an author. She has been in the education world, and she has a wonderful story. So I'm very excited to get to know her even more. We literally just met a few minutes ago.
For the first time.
Yes, I mean, we've been in contact, obviously.
Yes.
But I'm very excited to have you here. I know that you have a very inspirational story, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be excited to get to know you even more.
Well, I'm excited to tell my story, and thank you so much for having me here today.
Course.
Yes,
No,
I was
thank you.
lovely to meet you. You're a lovely person.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Well, likewise. So I always like to start from the beginning. I mean, I know that you're a children's author,
Yes.
and that's what you do now. But I want to know before you were doing that,
The journey.
Who is Claudia and how you started? Where are you from? Where do you go to school? And then how you eventually got to doing what you're doing now. So let's do it.
Okay. So my name is Claudia Villarreal. As you know, I was born in Laredo, Texas. I grew up in a small community that I love dearly. It's a small town by the name of Zapata. Okay. But I always felt like I wanted to be in a big city. You know, ever since I was in high school, I wanted to move to LA. I wanted to move to LA. Yeah. So my passion started actually in theater.
Okay.
And so I went to Kingsville in it was Texas A&M International in Laredo. I switched from Kingsville to Texas A&M International in Laredo, and I graduated with a degree in psychology.
Okay.
With a minor in sociology. And after that, I was working as a social worker, right, for MHMRA in Harris County in Houston. And I still couldn't get rid of, because that acting, you know, I always wanted to do theater. So
you had it in you.
I had it in me, right? I had started with a theater major, but my mom was like, you have to get your degree first before you can move to LA. So I thought I was going to move to LA right away, but no. So I got my degree and I ended up moving to Houston.
Okay.
In Houston, I was I was a social worker and I was working MHMRA, as I said, in Harris County. But it was a lot of paperwork and not a lot of one-on-one.
Okay.
And so I felt like I wanted that one-on-one more than the paperwork, right? And so I ended up going into a certification for teaching, for special education.
Okay.
And after a couple of years of being a social worker, I moved on to teaching special education. And I thought, okay, you know, I was already in my 20s, and I thought for sure the acting bug is going to go away.
Yeah.
And it didn't. And so I taught in Houston, and then I moved back to Laredo, and I was teaching in Laredo, and I could not get rid of that bug. And so literally one summer I said, I'm going to go to LA to get my journeyman artistry in Burbank for MUD. And I did. I moved there and I said, I'll be back. You know, I can do it on weekends. I can do quinceañeras, weddings, Halloween, something like that. And I didn't come back. Okay. And so I stayed in Los Angeles and I got my journeyman artistry certification with makeup artistry, right? Oh, wow. And so it was about 10 weeks. It was a 10-week program. And I wanted to be in the industry. And so I ended up, you know, doing commercials. I did, you know, I became a member of the Screen Actors Guild. Yeah. So I was doing commercials. I was auditioning. And I remember at the beginning, I started doing extra work, right? And so, because that's how you start, right? You want to get your feet wet and all that. And then I started auditioning, and little by little, like, got a commercial here and there. And then I almost got the movie Get Smart. Yeah, I was in the top. I got a call back. But then one of my acquaintances ended up getting that movie, you know, because we were all in the same circle.
I'm sure
we all got to know each other. And we would audition for the same roles because your type and all of that.
Okay.
And back then I was a little bit on the heavier side. So we would audition for the same roles and stuff. So I was kind of getting closer. I was getting callbacks. I was getting things like that. And then I actually ended up getting sick. And so I was in the middle of the auditions and everything. And when I got a diagnosis of ovarian cancer. So yeah, so I ended up going to the doctor, I think on a Thursday, and I was told Monday morning that it was ovarian cancer, that I had to go in immediately. And so from a Thursday, getting all the ultrasound and all the exams done and everything, Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning, I got the call that I had ovarian cancer. It was a 10-pound tumor, 8 to 10 pound tumor the size of a football.
gosh.
Yes.
And this was all happening in LA.
This was all happening in LA.
Okay, how old were you?
I was about 35.
Okay.
Because it was back in 2010.
Okay.
And so it all happened really quickly. I was on a Monday morning. They were like, come in for testing, right? And it was so weird because I don't know if I could go back to how they found the tumor.
Of course.
Yeah. So earlier on, I was coming back and forth from LA to Texas and stuff. And I, like as I mentioned before, I was heavy. And so I wanted, at that time, everybody was getting the lap band and the sleeve and all that.
Yes.
And so I was like, you know what? I want to do it too. But it was literally from one day to the next that I decided to do it. And we got all the testing done and all of that. This was in April 2010, I believe. And the doctor was like, Dr. Morris in Laredo, because I had come back to Laredo, he was like, you know what? You have something that's showing that you should go check out. And he was like, I can't diagnose you or anything like that, but you need to go check it out.
Wow.
But I didn't have any insurance at the time because I was doing acting and stuff like that. No. Yeah. And so I had to wait, but I had booked a commercial that allowed me to kind of get the directors, Blue Cross Blue Shield directors insurance.
Okay.
And so I had declined it, but I tried to get it back. And it took a few months of going back and forth and writing letters and all that. And they finally approved me. And so I was able to go to the doctor in August. It was like the last week of August. Yeah. And I was able to get the best care because I went to Cedars-Sinai. And it was just, like I said, God sent because, So this was like the last week of August on a Thursday. It was on a Monday morning. They called me up. You have a tumor. You have to come in. So I was able to go to the hospital, Cedars-Sinai, where all the stars go. And, there I was, best care. And Tuesday, my mom flew from Zapata, from Zapata to LA. And she went in Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. They already had me on the operating table and they had to do. Everything happened super fast. And Monday, go in, do all the exams, the heart exam, everything. Tuesday, mom flies over. Wednesday morning, they're, her, my friends, and my ex-boyfriend, who at the time, lived with me, they were all there with me. And it was an ordeal, right? Because you don't even have time to think about it. No. I think a lot of my friends were like, wait, is she going to survive? Yeah. Is she not? Because it was ovarian cancer, stage 2B. And so I remember, and so that's what made me kind of have to stop for a minute. I had a partial, almost a full hysterectomy. And, they were kind of like, well, we don't know what the prognosis is. We don't know what is going to happen. So send it off to pathology. But people, I think, were talking to my mom about maybe bringing me home to Texas and all that. And, because they didn't know. I mean, a tumor that big, they probably thought, she's probably stage 4. When I got the call from the pathologist, actually, he was like, I've been a pathologist for 20 some years and I've never seen such a slow growing cancer. You're only in stage 2B. Wow. And so, but it still made me have to drop everything. Yeah, I moved back to Texas and, I went to, he actually referred me to MD Anderson, also some of the best care. Yeah. And I was able to get chemo there and was able to overcome it. And now I'm in remission. And that's how I ended up moving back to Texas. And I left that acting for a little bit.
So once you got the tumor removed, you still had to go through chemotherapy?
Yes.
Okay. How long was
it?
It
was six months of it, I think. I believe it was 6 sessions, if I'm not mistaken.
Because I know chemotherapy affects people in different ways. How did it affect you?
For me, it just got me really tired, and I had just had the weight loss surgery prior, like months prior.
Oh, so you did have it.
So, right. So I did have it. Okay. And actually that's how they found it. And so then I had that. And then I did the surgery in September 2nd. 2010. That was the surgery date. And so I was still going through everything. So I was losing a lot of weight. I remember, I lost over 150 pounds in the end, like after a year. Yeah. I mean, I've gained some of that back, but yeah, I lost over 150 pounds because of the therapy, because of the surgery, because of everything. And I remember there was a lot of things happening that year. I referred to it from as it was a difficult time, but everything's good. Yeah. I was having to move from LA, having to go through all of that. But I remember that was the first time the first book came also.
Okay.
Yeah. So my very first book, while I was doing all this, had just come, and I tell everybody, gift from God, right? Because I was actually reading another book at night, living in LA. I fell asleep and I remember waking up at 3 a.m. and I remember all these words were just coming through my head, coming to my head, right?
Yeah.
Like a marquee in the deep, deep night among cold and fright, there lurked a thief with a mission in sight. And I literally got the whole story just like that. And I wrote it down. And that was that was the alphabet thief who stole the vowels. And it was prior to this year, like the year before.
Okay.
And, or maybe a couple years before, but it was very near. I remember everything happening at the same time.
Yeah.
It was 16, 17 years ago. So I don't have exact dates except for the surgery of the cancer. But, the book came and then I was coming back and forth to Texas and then I was going through the chemotherapy and then my mom had also gotten diagnosed with Still's disease, but it took them about 3 months to find it. She was in the hospital in and out. My grandmother had just died the year before. My sister had given birth to my nephews, which were micro preemies, 1.5 pounds, 1.8 pounds.
Oh
Yes. And so we were in the NICU going through all of this at the same time. It was a difficult time.
When it rains, it pours,
yes,
right?
it did.
But
yeah.
y'all came out stronger.
Yes, actually, yes. My mom's good. My nephews are 14 now.
My God,
yeah, so
that's
it's
awesome.
yes. So it was around the same year and a half, 2-year period, and everything's a blur because it was just so much
going on.
But yeah, so at that time, I was still doing school visits with the book. I had started doing school visits with the very first book, and I was opening an edible arrangements in Laredo, Texas, ground up. At the same within the 2-year span, like I said.
So you say you had the idea of the book and you were going through all of this. At what point did you say, okay, I'm going to make this a reality?
Well, it was prior to all of this, the book had come before, I think. So now that I remember, the book had come like the year before.
Gotcha.
So I was doing
you already
school.
had the book.
Right. I already had the idea of the book and the book. Then everything happened while I was going to the schools. So yeah, I was going through the schools while I was doing chemotherapy. I remember because now thinking about it, I would go do a school visit. Sometimes I would have to go outside or right after the presentation, I'd have to throw up and stuff. And they didn't know. I mean, some of the librarians knew what I was going through because I trusted them enough. The wonderful librarians. I've had the pleasure of meeting great, amazing librarians that would always support me. And so when I was going through that, they would give me the time because sometimes I would get sick. So the book did come before the cancer, like the year or two before. Yeah.
Okay. And so you obviously moved here back to Texas to go through all of that. Did you at any point think you were going to move back to LA?
I always had the aspiration that I would, or I guess the dreams that I would. I don't think that acting bug has ever completely gone away.
Okay.
I always had the desire to and stuff, but then I found San Antonio and I fell in love with the city too. So I'm good here now.
Nice.
But I always thought that I would at some point move back to LA. But I think that in LA, while I love it and there's so much to do there and it's so busy, I think I like the small town community feel as well. And I think San Antonio has both. Yeah. You still have the friendliness and the community, and then you have kind of the big city feel. So
and you've been able to really pursue what you love, which is writing and visiting schools and being close to children.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that part, that you write the book, you start visiting schools.
Right.
How does that fulfill you, or how did you find your passion for doing this, for writing?
Yes. Well, like I tell everybody, this is the job that I never knew I always wanted. I had no idea, right? And so I was always in between teaching because I love teaching. I was always in between the business. I've since sold edible arrangements, but I loved the business world, right? And I loved acting. So this found me, right? I didn't say I want to be an author. But when I found it, I was like, oh my goodness, I never want to lose it. Yes. I love it. It's got everything that I want. It's got the teaching part because when I go to schools, I visit and I teach a lesson. Yeah. It's got the business part because of course there's a business to it, right? You have to buy the books, you have to buy the product, you have to sell the merchandise and everything. And then it's got the acting part because when I go out there, I talk to the kids, right? Awesome. And so it's got everything that I love, acting, business, and teaching. And so I didn't have to give up any of it, right? And there's no job that you have where you can combine all your loves, right? Or that I feel that I had, because if I taught, I had to give up business and acting. If I acted, I had to give up teaching and business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so if I did the business, I had to give up both. And so this is the one thing that it was like a gift to me, because I love what I do now. And I found when I started visiting schools, I was like, it was kind of like a fluke, because people were like, oh, you have a book? Well, come, and they were like, oh, well, we know some librarians who know other librarians. So I went from one town to another to another. And I remember that first year, somebody gave me the opportunity to go speak at Region 1, which includes all of South Texas.
Right.
And then I eventually made it over to Region 20, right, which is San Antonio. But when I was at Region 1, they gave me 10 minutes. And I remember it was at the end of somebody's presentation. And I didn't know what I was going to say, So here I was in front of like 100 and some librarians. Yeah. And all of a sudden I start speaking and they start laughing and I'm making them laugh. And by the end of it, I had about a year and a half worth of presentations. That's awesome. Yeah. And so I have absolutely loved this journey, every minute of it.
And so now you have 2 books, correct?
I have 2 books and I'm working on a third one.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. Tell me about the second one.
Okay, so the second one is called The Bully Who Learned to Love.
Yes.
And that was created in 2019. Okay. And when I first started, right? So these librarians, because I had the other book for about 10 years, okay. Right? And so they were like, okay, Claudia, it's time for a new one. So 10 years later, same way. It came the same exact way. Woke up. It was always between 3 and 5 in the morning. Nice. Woke up and all these words. So I mean, yes, I fixed them and I get an editor and stuff, but almost the whole book is done by that morning or the day of. Yeah. And so I wrote it down again, and they all seem to teach a lesson, because book 1 was about, the vowels and reading and how vowels are important in our everyday language. And this book is about kindness and empathy and how we are all different and we have to accept and embrace each other's differences. And so it's about a bully who is mean because he doesn't know any better, right? So he hasn't been taught. He hasn't been taught by anybody. So he's a bully, and all of a sudden he feels, because he's making fun of people or, being a bully, right? And all of a sudden he feels like he's hurt somebody. And for the first time, it kind of tugs at him. And so he feels sad. And so he goes to a school, right? Because he knows that's where we get a lesson. That's where we get taught, right? So he goes to a school and he meets a teacher and he's like, hey, can you show me what I'm doing wrong? And so she's like, of course. So she takes him in and she teaches him that, we all have to accept each other regardless of our color, of our race, of our ethnicity, of our beliefs, of our language, of our, so all these things, right? They go through all these things one by one. So she teaches him that he has to be kind and loving, and that it doesn't matter if they're not orange, because he's orange. He's an orange bully, because I tell everybody I chose orange specifically because orange is the color of bully awareness. And so I believe my book is blue, and that's a color of bully prevention, or it might be vice versa, but they were chosen for a specific reason. Nice. And so even if they're not orange like him, he still has to be nice and kind.
I love that. And what is the reaction of the children, especially, I think now we hear so many stories, and I think that's probably one of the biggest issues, the bullying,
yes.
When you go and read to these children, what do you see in their faces, or what is their reaction when you're telling them this story?
Yeah. Well, depending on the age, because I go to elementary school. So depending on pre-K, first grade, they're so excited. They want to be buddies. Like, we're ready to go be buddies. We're ready to go, and be friends and share and yes. And so that's the reaction I get from that grade level. Second and third grade, they're excited still. Yeah. They're super excited, but they're talking a little bit more about what they can do to be kind, to be empathetic. Like, how can we change? Because they kind of already start getting those kids that are not as nice as the other kids, right? And so 4th and 5th graders, they're already kind of experiencing this. And so they're kind of, they're attentive, they're listening, but they're kind of I guess relating a little bit more to it, because they know what it's about. They know that they've experienced this. So they're the ones that are like, well, so-and-so is doing this and that. So at this time, they're already experiencing it a little bit more. So they're kind of reserved at first, but then they embrace it. They lean into it, And so, but all of them absolutely love Buddy. They love Buddy, and they get so excited with Buddy because the character does come out at the end. And I think they love because he's reformed. And I think everybody cheers on the person that's reformed. And so because he was mean, but now he's nice, they absolutely cannot get enough of him. And so they cheer him on when he comes out. They're like, yeah, thanks for the change. I mean, I even have a plushie with the book, and he sells out all the time because everybody, I've had cafeteria full of kids, Buddy, Buddy, Buddy. Yeah, I think that, they embrace that he had his flaws, but he changed that, and now he is a good person, and he's the best buddy. So,
and, you also touched on something that I think is very important, and that's the power of teachers.
Yes.
Teachers have such an important role in our children's lives.
Yes.
And I think it's super important that they truly know that, because they have the ability to impact our children in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they spend so much time with them.
They do.
And so I love that you incorporated that lesson within it. I mean, obviously in children's terms,
yes.
right? But I think it's also very important, and it's almost like holding our teachers accountable and seeing and reminding them that they have a very important role in our children's lives.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, next to your parents, the teachers are the most important person in their life during their education, right? Because your parents are your first teachers, right? And it's up to them to kind of teach you the ways. But sometimes if they're too busy, or they're, we can't fault them all the time, but the teachers come in, and they have such a crucial role in the children's life. And so it's through them that they learn these lessons. Yeah. And so, of course, I want to highlight that, because teachers are so important. And, sometimes, and without getting too into it, they're underpaid, they're undervalued, they're underappreciated sometimes. And they shouldn't be, because teachers are a main source of education for our kids. Of sometimes they lean towards the teachers and they get close to a teacher. And so it is up to them. And if they see this happening, it's not only about, math and 2 + 2, it's also about somebody that might not be feeling well, that they talk to the teacher and they look to them for guidance,
Yeah. I love that. I love how you incorporated all of those lessons in this book, especially reaching that younger audience. Like I said, I mean, I think bullying, unfortunately, has been such a hot topic. And I mean, we had here in San Antonio a few years ago, I'm sure you've heard of it, of a child that committed suicide because of bullying. And we hear those stories all the time. And so I think you putting your little grain to affect that and affect it in a positive way, I think it's super, super important.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I want to do. It is exactly what I want to do, because I as a psychology major, I read that most people form their little personalities at 7 and 8, and that's more or less about 2nd and 3rd grade, I think. And so a lot of the times, if we get to them before, if we're able to teach them the right ways before, we can stop that. Because as teenagers, 6th grade is the grade that they're absolutely going to experience the most bullying in. I mean, year after year, I think 30% of the bullying occurs in 6th grade. And so if we can stop it before that, if we can kind of put that grade, and I've had letters of kids who said, actually a couple of kids that wrote to me, because the teacher sometimes will give me, my kids wrote these letters to you. And I've had letters where it's like, I used to be a bully, but now I'm a buddy. And that to me, yes, because if I could change one student, right, it's I've done my job, It is worth it. And so, absolutely. If we can stop them from becoming teenagers or adults that bully right now, it's the perfect time to stop it.
It's going to make a huge difference.
I hope so.
Yes.
I hope so.
And so then you're working on 3rd book right now.
Yes.
Is that a surprise? Is that
no? I've actually so it is still dealing with how important you are. I'll tell you a little bit about it. So it's called The Little Lost, and it is it's all the characters don't have a name in the book, oddly enough, but they do have a name after. So the alphabet thief, he doesn't have a name in the book, but he's Alfie, right? The bully who learned to love, he doesn't have a name in the book, but he's Buddy, right? Because he becomes a buddy. So the little lost note, his name is Ocho. His name is Ocho, and it is about a little eighth note that has a journey. And I won't talk too much about the journey,
no, that's okay.
but it does have a lesson. And the lesson is no matter how small you feel, you are important.
I love that.
Yes.
And when are you planning on releasing that?
Well, we've had a little bit of a situation where I have to put it on pause.
Okay.
But it does. I do want to release it within the next year.
Nice,
Yes,
nice,
it
nice.
is.
So it
It's
can
already
be
done. I just,
posted.
yes, I'm working on the last of it, but I do want to release it within the next year.
Nice.
So
So now you travel to different schools. Do you travel only here in Texas, or are you traveling also to other places?
Well, so far it's only been in Texas.
Okay.
I started just in South Texas, right?
Okay.
So I know like a lot of people there, right? And then I kind of moved on to San Antonio and stuff in Houston, and now I'm going to Dallas area, Odessa I've been to, and so Corsicana, all that area. So I'm really growing, into Bryan, Texas, So but I haven't been outside of Texas. I would love to if there are any schools that
that
want.
the dream? Like, would
that's
you
the
like for
dream
it
to
to- yeah.
expand.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course. Texas is big enough for
for
for a
sure.
whole a ton of years probably. But I would love to visit other states with the book. I mean, I would love to introduce it. I remember that I've not been to El Paso, but I remember we had a couple of years ago, there was a book festival here in San Antonio, and I was there, and I was talking about The Bully Who Learned to Love. And when they asked me about my previous books, I said, The Alphabet Thief Who Stole the Vowels and all this stuff. So I remember getting down, and this person came over. She was like, I'm fangirling. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, can we take a picture? She's like, I think she was a first grade teacher.
Okay.
She's like, I use your book to teach the vowels to my students.
I
So
love
it has reached other places.
Yeah.
One of my friends was like, hey, look at what I found in my pediatrician's office. And it was The Alphabet Thief Who Stole the Vowels. So, but I don't think it's gone across Texas. I've sold some to other states. I believe California, Indiana or somewhere, that it was sent over Florida, but I haven't visited those schools.
Okay.
So that would be the dream to.
No, but you're doing Texas. I mean, like, you said,
Yes,
Texas is big
Texas
enough.
is huge,
Yeah.
huge. Yes,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, I mean, you've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but going a little bit more deep into it, what really truly inspires you and motivates you to keep doing this kind of work? Because I'm sure it's exhausting to be traveling, and I mean, you really need that talent to think of these things and think how you're going to reach the younger audience. I mean, it's not easy to reach little kids,
Right.
What inspires you to keep doing this kind of work?
I think at first it was my nephews, right? So one of the questions that I always get asked is, were you bullied? And the answer is yes. I'm an adult already. I can say, yes, I was bullied and I went through what I went through, but it's not so much for me. I've gotten past that. So when my nephews were babies, they were micro preemies, as I said. And so they started off in special education classes, but, eventually one of them, tested out and everything. And I was always afraid of that. I was always afraid, but so they got me started. When I wrote this book, I was like, this is for my nephews. And I even dedicated it to them because I didn't want them to go through that, right? But then doing the school visits and going through and having kids tell me, well, I was bullied, or I was a bully, but I'm not anymore. Now I'm not anymore. So that, to me, like their faces, trying to get them to not lose that joy, that childhood, right? Because when we're bullied, it does kind of kill us sometimes, right? And we get sad, and we're like, sometimes we don't want to go to school. There's been kids, like you said, that unfortunately are no longer with us because of bullying. And this can escalate, and it can become something much bigger than us. And so just seeing their little faces inspires me to go back, because if I can stop somebody from being bullied, I feel like I've done, something worthwhile. And so they do. The children, the students, my nephews, the kids that come up and tell me how happy they are to meet an author, they keep me going. And yes, I'm tired. You reach a certain age and I'm like, I bought my car. It was a used car because I had to get a hybrid. So I traded it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a hybrid because I travel so much. Yeah. And I bought it at 36,000 miles. And a year later, 13 months later, it has 82,000 miles. So it's been I travel a lot, but, and you have to carry your stuff, and you have to, but they keep me going. Every school, every new school I visit, or even if I'm visiting like 2 or 3, the same school 2 or 3 times, it's a new feeling. It's almost like, a new energy, and it keeps me going.
I love that.
Absolutely.
And probably a dumb question, but have you gone through your books to your nephews?
Oh, of course, yes. It actually took me a minute.
Really?
It actually took me a minute to get approved to go to their school, but yes, I had to. I had to make it a point to go there before they got to middle school, because I tend to stick to elementary.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find lessons for maybe middle school and high school, but I've done elementary.
Yeah.
Mostly. I have gone to a couple of middle schools and even some workplaces to talk about bullying.
Oh, I love that.
But about 96% of my visits have been elementary schools.
And that's funny that you mentioned that you've been to workplaces, because when I was a reporter for Univision, one of my fears was that I thought I had to speak in like super elevated words, and like I was always scared when I first started. And I remember one of the best advice I got is, you always need to speak to your audience at a 5th grade level.
Really?
And it makes sense that it simplifies things.
Yes.
And so you going to speak at workplaces simplifies that idea of bullying, and we can all be victims of it, and we can all face it. We don't have to be elementary kids, and sometimes we need to have lessons like an elementary kid to really grasp it and understand it.
Yeah,
So.
I absolutely agree with that. Sometimes you do have to speak to people at a 5th grade level, not to speak down to them or anything like that, but sometimes it's easier to understand things at that level.
Things.
And there's that show, Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader? For a reason, right? And so simplifying things does make it easier for everybody, and all of us are able to understand that, be kind, be nice, be empathetic. We all have differences. Right. So
I love that. I love it. And so where do you see yourself maybe 5 years from now?
Well, I am hoping to still be visiting schools for the Little Lost Note, and maybe hopefully a 4th book. Okay. There is another book that I don't talk about too much, and I don't know where it's going. And one of the books that I got in the middle of the night, right? Because as I said, every single one was about life lessons from God, right? And so it's more of a YA book, and it talks about my personal journey, right? And so the name or the title was Conversations with God, right? A book about life, love, and self-esteem. But I never followed through with that book. And so that might be my 4th book if I decide to go beyond the Little Lost Note. But I want all my books to have a lesson, to have, encouragement, to be positive, whether it's elementary or YA or anything like that. I want them to have something a takeaway. Yeah. Where it's like, be kind, be nice, or I am important, right? And so I want them to always have a takeaway.
So if you don't mind me asking, tell me a little bit about your journey as far as God goes. How are you putting your own journey into this book, or what is your idea, and what have you been through to get you to where you're at right now? So
the new book, the YA book?
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of the times, starting from elementary, I was bullied, right? And because I was always a heavy girl. Yeah. And so I've always had a love relationship with God, but also, I would get mad a lot because it's like, why are you not there for me? Why are you not, here? Like, why, and so there's always been a back and forth. Yeah. And so I did go through a lot, like I said, this whole year, but for some reason, I always overcome, and I always survive, and I always come back, right? And I feel like I'm here for a purpose, to teach that lesson. And if maybe somebody out here, somebody listening to the podcast has ovarian cancer and they're going through a really, really rough time, maybe they can relate, hey, she had an 8-pound tumor, 10-pound tumor the size of a football, and yet she's here. I went through a point where I was like, am I gonna make it? I mean, going through the cancer, going through the move, going through a breakup, going through all of this at the same time, my mom in the hospital, the boys being born, my grandma just having died. It was so much that I didn't think that it was like really like what, yeah. And so I think after that, like knowing that I always come out has said, okay, he's there. I just need to maybe learn some lessons along the way. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I just want people to know that there is like, you can overcome things, but you've got to also put in your own work, right?
There's light at the end of the tunnel always.
There is
the
light at
rainbow
the end.
always comes out, right?
Yes,
The sun always
absolutely,
shines.
yes.
That's wonderful. That's great. And something that I always like to ask is if somebody listening wants to follow in the same path as you've been, maybe become an author, what piece of advice would you have liked to hear that maybe somebody did give you or somebody didn't give you, now you've learned it? What advice would you offer to somebody that wants to be in the same business as you?
I think what I would tell them, one is what I tell the kids, right? Going back to simplifying things. Always write your ideas down, right? Always write your ideas down, because we always have people, and I know personally some people that are like, oh, we had this idea way before it was created or way before it was done, right? So always write your ideas, no matter where you're at. Carry a pad, carry a pencil, and always write down your ideas, your brainstorming, all of that. Yeah. And always be your biggest fan, because that was something that it took forever for me. I always put myself down. I always like, no, but it's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. I always had imposter syndrome. I lived with all of this. And it wasn't until I was like, you know what? My story is good enough. Like, all of these kids like it, it sold over, 40, 50,000 copies, my first book. Right. And it's like, it is good enough. And you have to learn to be your worst critic and your best critic, right? Yeah. Both, because nobody else is going to do what you do, and always, always, always believe in yourself. And so don't second guess anything, right? And if you love it, and if you believe in it, and if you want to tell that story, just do it. Yep. Do it.
I love it. Love it. Thank you for that. And then the question that I always like to ask is, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, little Claudia, what would you tell her?
Well, yeah.
After everything you've been through, obviously you've been through a lot of difficult times, but also some wonderful times, and
yes,
have experienced some wonderful things along the way. What would you tell little Claudia?
I would tell her, I know this is cliche, but I would tell her that it's going to be okay. Yeah. It's going to be okay. Because at that time, I didn't know. I mean, you're in for a bumpy ride, kid, but it's going to be okay. And no matter what life throws at you, you're going to be fine. And I would tell her, just keep going, keep believing, keep dreaming. And, even at 50, well, I don't know, we could say how, I still have my dreams. I still haven't let go of the acting bug, which I still want to do eventually. And no matter how crazy people, because you always have your friends like, estás loca, or I'm moving to LA. No, you're crazy. I did everything, I said I was going to be on TV, and if it was just commercial or two, or I've had 8 commercials now, nice. I said that I wanted to move to LA. I moved to LA. Yeah. I opened my own business. I set out, and I didn't think I could do it, and I maybe it's not as extraordinary as but it's good, and I would tell her to just hang in there, kid,
I love it. Where can people find you? Where can people find out more information?
I know, Facebook. I know, older people have the Facebook. I'm trying to get on Instagram and TikTok, but if they Google The Bully Who Learned to Love, okay, that one has probably the most posts and everything. Okay. I'm on Amazon also. Okay. I'm also on Instagram under Claudia Isela. Okay. But like I said, Facebook, The Bully Who Learned to Love, The Alphabet Thief Who Stole the Vowels, okay, or Claudia Villarreal. They can find me there. Too. I do have a website. Yes. It's dreamstarpublications.com. Okay. Yes. Perfect. So Dreamstar Publications.
Great. And that's where you have information if they want to book you for speaking at schools and great.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So there is a contact form on that, or they could, the easiest way and the fastest way would be through my Facebook page, The Bully Who Learned to Love, just to reach out there. Okay. And that's the best response. The fastest response they would get, but yeah,
anything else you want to share?
No, I just want to say thank you. Yeah. I feel so comfortable. I'm so glad that you gave me the opportunity to share my story. No, so thank you so much
thank you for sharing your story. I think it's wonderful, and I think you're doing amazing things for the community, especially for our younger audiences who really need that, and especially nowadays with everything that they have to go through and all that noise that's out there. So I thank you for everything you're doing for our little ones.
Absolutely. Yes. And I hope it does reach, and the audience that it needs to. And I hope that and I want to tell them to just hang in there as well. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, keep us posted. I'll be on the lookout for your next books. And you're welcome to come back anytime.
Thank you so much. I will.
You. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for watching one more episode of Momentos and Voices. Don't forget to subscribe and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.